Hi guys, thank you for watching this video. This is going to be one of a series of 3, possibly 4 videos about how to set up a cost-effective test environment for your applications. Now, this one is just going to be a quick overview to discuss, but other videos I will record is to set up a virtual server. And also how to set up a domain controller in Azure, and then obviously you can then set up your own little network for testing various applications. So predominantly it's for my customers out there that use the products that I provide to them, but as it's quite a useful exercise, I thought I'd broadcast it to the wider audience in case it's useful for other people out there. So just a few slides I wanted to put together. And as you can see, the intro is setting up a cost-effective test environment. I use Microsoft Azure. There is obviously other cloud computing services, which is what Azure is, that you can use. However, I've demoed with a couple, tried a few, and this is the one that I prefer. There's been a lot of trial and error, and I've learned some key things along the way. So predominantly the cost comes from 2 key areas when you set up this, so this is something to take into consideration when you're setting up. The first one is a virtual server. So when you have your virtual server, you need to put the spec in order to run it. So obviously when you're doing your evaluations or your testing, then check the sizing guides for those applications so you can pick the right virtual server. There's a particular choice one that I like to use, and I will show that in the notes shortly. The other key area for cost is disk space. So disk space will also put the costs of your service up over a period of time. So what I'm trying to sort of show you in this short video is just to sort of how to reduce those costs. And really the key area here is to, first of all, when you're setting up, identify the most cost-effective route. Now there's a little URL there which points to this particular page. So as you can see here, this is a managed disk pricing page, which then allows you to check different places around the regions. Based in the UK, I find a bit of trial and error that the most cost-effective place is North Europe. Granted, you could go to one of the US servers and get a cheaper service, but there are, as I say, there are servers closer to home, and there are a couple in the UK, UK South, UK West. At the time when I was first evaluating this, not all the virtual servers were available on those. I've had a quick check, quick recce up, and it still looks like that North Europe is slightly cheaper than West Europe. And as I say, you can always check this. There are 3 types of disks that you can utilize. 2 of them are solid state drives. So you've got your premium, creme de la creme here. And as you can see here, it then shows you the 3 different disk sizes. Now this is very important as well when it comes to setting up. As you can see, there's significant cost differences between a 32 gig one at £3.94 per month versus a 128 gig at $14.70. If we look then at the standard solid state drive, you can see the price significantly drops. And then finally, if we go to the standard hard drive, these obviously are slower in the throughput, but you can see as well the price of these are quite impressively cheap. We can see here a 32 gig drive there is £1.15 a month. Now this is really important, because when you set up your virtual server, by standard, when you set them up, if we go into create a virtual machine, what happens is you get some defaults. So if we look at, first of all, the regions, as I mentioned, it's kind of trial and error to find out where the cheapest one is. I find particularly North Europe is slightly cheaper than West Europe, and I will prove that quickly now when we go to the sizing. So first of all, let me jump the image, but let's go to the size. Again, you can see standard, it installs a D2S V3, which is 2 vCPUs and 8 gig of memory, and I think this is quite pricey if I'm not mistaken. So it's important that we go to the change size, and then when you come into here you will see a list of different size virtual machines, and now I typically go for the B2S. I find here that this is usually adequate for what I need when I'm doing my testing, and if I was to run that permanently then it's coming up at £26.62 per month. Obviously if you just need something simple and basic then you can drop them prices quite down to the B1S there, £6.65. Let me just jump out of there and let's go to North Europe, and if I click on the price in here you can see here that the pricing has dropped a little bit there. We've got £24.95 for the B2S and then £6.27 for your B1S. So as you can see it's only small, but those over a period of time it's quite significant saving. So that's why I say do your homework and check on these prices. Now the other thing which is quite key here, just if we jump back into my slide, is once we've identified the cost-effective route and the region, it's very important then to identify the managed disk size. So you'll find for the most part a small disk of about 30 gig is sufficient. Now if you do not do this exercise when you're choosing your virtual machine, then this is going to really bump up the costs, and we can see that here from the image. So there's a number of standard images that you can use here, but if you're not careful and you just pick a standard Windows 2012-2016 server, that is going to install with 128 gig, so quite sizable. Now if you recall when we went back to this pricing guide, you can see here 128 gig for this particular drive, which is a standard, which is okay. It's only £4.39, but if you are using solid state and you do want something like the premium one, then that's £14.70 on top of your £26 to £28 if you have the B2S server. So you can see quite significant these are. Now the thing is, when you size your hard drive you can go up but you can't go down. So if you use one of the discs from the store and it's 128, then you can go up to 256, 512, etc. But you're not going back down to 64, 32. Now you'll find, I think 2012 server, 2016 server, you're probably talking about 12, 13 gig. So with that in mind, you'll probably find 32 gig is going to suffice for most of your testing needs. As I say, these aren't production servers, these are testing servers. So this is what's crucial here when it comes to selecting the image. Now you can browse all public and private images, and then when you do that, as I said, you can go up but you can't go down. So from here you can select your images. Now the key thing to do when you are selecting your images is look for your server that you're going to choose, and make sure that you can see the small disk at the beginning. If it doesn't have small disk, then you're going to be by default installing something that's potentially going to be 128 gig, and that's going to significantly increase your costs of running this. So that's just something to bear in mind when you're setting up your servers. So first of all, obviously identify the cost-effective route. At the moment as I speak, North Europe is the region of my choice where I put my servers, or where I'm going to be moving a lot of my servers, and then manage disk size. So check what applications you're going to test, check the sizing guides, and ultimately if you can keep the size of the disk down, then you're going to have a cheaper rate. Now the other thing obviously is hard disk drive versus solid state drive. Okay, reducing the ongoing costs. Now this is the key thing here. So there are some things you can do to keep these costs low. Obviously, if you're going to run that 24/7, 365, then that's always going to provide a service and always going to occur a charge. So one of the key things you should be doing is on the virtual server is shut down the server when you've finished using it. Now, if we go back into my Azure and look at my virtual machines, you can see here the status of the virtual machines. Now, it's quite key here that when you shut down, it's going to drop it into a status of stopped. That, whilst it will stop the costs occurring for the size, so as you can see here, the standard D2S, etc., whatever you've got set up there, it's going to reduce that cost. What it's not going to do is it's not going to stop the ongoing costs for the drive space, etc. So it is quite imperative that you do stop those from within Azure as well. So you can see here, stop deallocated. This one stopped, so it's still got a IP address associated. So again, this also occurs a cost having a an IP address running. So as I say, if you're not using it, then just stop it. And the way to do that is simply go into the virtual machine and then click on stop. That's going to say it's going to remove the IP address. If you stop it, are you sure? Click on yes, and then you can see that it's going to stop that virtual machine. Now this is quite key, because when you stop that virtual machine, then that's going to reduce the costs quite significantly, and then your daily cost here is going to be very minimal based on whatever the disk size is. Now the other thing you can do here, which is quite a little clever tip, as well as shutting down the server, which stops the virtual server costs, on the managed disk, when you stop the server, it's just going to run those minimal daily costs. What you can also do to reduce the ongoing cost is change the disk type. Now again, once this machine is stopped, what we can do is we can actually go into the machine. So let's say, for example, if I just pick this one, TNSVR1, if I go to the disk here in the settings and then click on the actual disk and then configuration, what you will see here is this particular disk is a standard SSD, so it's a standard solid state drive and it's 127 gig. I can't reduce that, but what I could do is, if I wanted to reduce that daily cost, is I could change that and I could put it as a standard hard drive, and that would then occur the daily charge at that particular rate. So why I am doing this video is because, as I mentioned, there's a lot of applications out there that you're not going to need a 128 gig drive in order to test and evaluate. That's why it's quite key to identify the size of it, and if so, run that small disk when you check your image, and by doing that you're going to get yourself a 30 gigabyte drive for your testing, which, as I say, should be more than adequate for all of your testing purposes, particularly the applications that I provide to my customers. And then the beauty of that is, if I jump out of this one, here is one I've made earlier, Blue Peter style. If we go to this particular virtual machine here and I click on the disk, we can see from here it's a 30 gig, and the configuration, when I click on it, is a standard hard disk drive. Now if I want to power that up and start using it, and I want it to be a bit more performing a lot better, then I can just simply change this and go to the premium solid state drive, and as you can see here, then that would then become a enhanced high performing drive for me. So you can see the throughput there changes quite significantly with that. But then when I'm not using it and I put it at rest, drop it into standard HDD, and then, as I say, I'm reducing my costs. So that's the main little tips that I can provide here with setting up a virtual server. Now the final thing I've done is I've actually just done a little sort of spreadsheet that helps me with the costing. So I've just put the example here, and at the very bottom you can see I've took a snapshot of the virtual machine sizes for both North Europe and West Europe, and you can see here the two that I particularly use, the B1S and the B2S. The costs here, these are a little bit older, but as I said, these change ongoing. You can see £6.27 versus £6.65, and then £24.95 versus £26.62. So again, I can decide which I want these virtual machines to run, and again, you can change these as and when needed. So as I say, if I'm running something and I just need to bump it up for a particular purpose, I can increase the virtual machine size, and I can change that as and when. The key thing though is, as I say, it comes to the actual disk size, because once you have selected that, you can't go down, you can go up. And you can see I've just put some costs here. You can see the P4, P6 and P10. This all relates to the premium solid state drive. So the P4 being the 32 gig, and then the P10 being the higher 128. Then you've got the standard solid state drive, which is E4 to E10, and then you've got your hard disk drive, which is S4 to S10. So what I'm aiming to do is have all of my servers on a 30 gig disk drive, and when I'm using them, I will bump them up into a P4 solid state drive, but when I've got them at rest, I will drop them down to a hard disk drive. And as you can see, £3.94 a month versus £1.15 a month is quite a significant saving over the year. So as you can see there, that's going to cost me £13.80 for a server at rest, not doing anything over the year, versus £47.28. And I've got 4 servers there, which I'm going to set up for my domain controller. And as you can see, if I've got all of those 4 switched off over the year, resting as a hard drive, it's going to cost me £55.20. However, obviously, if I was going to be doing that and leaving them as a solid state drive, then you can see quite a step in price. So this is what I've just done. As I said, you can configure your grid to how you want it. If you need a copy of this, I'm more than happy to share. As I say, it just gives me a bit of an idea of what drives I need, what size, and then the daily costs, etc. So I can work out all of that as I go along. That's pretty much it in terms of what I wanted to provide in this first demonstration, or this first video series. The next one, as I say, will be creating the virtual machine, and then creating the domain controller, and then setting up your little test network in order for if you've got a client server technology that you need to test, etc. Hope this was useful, and look forward to you watching the future videos. Bye now.